As I put on my armor, the queen watched, and froze at the tattoo on my back. Its walls were grown, not built. Tall sheets of crystal that held a soft inner light like frozen dawn. The air was cool and clean, with a faint smell of rain even though there were no clouds here. Every sound seemed to travel politely, as if the room itself had rules. Commander Elias Wren walked through the main corridor with steady steps. He did not rush. He did not slow down. He matched the rhythm of the escort beside him, 6 Aurelian attendants in silver robes, their long sleeves moving like calm water. They did not speak to him. They did not have to. Above them, the ceiling was a wide arch of clear stone. Strange star maps drifted across it in slow motion, changing with no visible source. Elias looked up for a moment. He saw lines and symbols that were not meant for human eyes, but he could still feel what they were trying to say. This was a place that remembered. Elias' boots touched the floor without echo. The floor was smooth and slightly warm, like skin that had never seen the sun. Every few meters, a thin thread of light ran through the crystal beneath his feet, guiding him forward. He knew the way. Humans had been here before. Not often, not recently, but the path was known. At the end of the corridor waited a door that was not really a door. It was a standing slab of pale crystal, unbroken and seamless. When the attendant stopped, it opened by itself, not sliding, not swinging, but simply choosing not to exist in the center anymore. Beyond it lay the preparation chamber. Elias stepped inside and felt the atmosphere change. The corridor was public. It was for show. The preparation chamber was private. It was where masks were adjusted and promises were checked. It was circular, with a low ceiling that made the space feel close. The walls were covered in small carvings, tight spirals, repeating patterns, marks that looked almost like writing. In the middle stood a long bench made of the same crystal as everything else. Above it hovered a simple metal stand. On the stand rested a case. Human metal. That alone was enough to make the attendants stare a little longer than they meant to. Elias moved toward it. His hands did not shake. They never did in these moments. He had learned the difference between fear and focus, and he had trained his body to choose focus. One of the attendants spoke at last, voice soft and melodic. "The Queen's sight is clear," it said. "She will notice everything." Elias nodded once. "That is her job." The attendant blinked slowly, as if unsure whether that was humor or insult. Among Aurelians, jokes were rare in formal spaces. Among humans, jokes sometimes kept a person from breaking under pressure. The attendant continued, careful. "The armor is symbolic." "Yes. Yes," Elias said. "It is part of the meeting." The attendant tilted its head. "Your kind places much meaning in old things." Elias glanced at the case. "We place meaning in promises." Silence returned. The attendant stepped back, making a half circle near the wall. They were present, but not close. In Aurelian culture, privacy was a gift, even when watched. Elias stood before the case and rested his palm on its lid. The metal was worn, scratched by time and travel. It was not pretty by Aurelian standards. It did not glow, it did not sing, it did not look alive, but it was honest. He pressed the small latch. It clicked. When he opened the case, the smell of human alloy rose faintly, dry, clean, familiar. Inside lay armor in pieces, arranged with care, plates shaped to fit a human body, joints designed to move without noise, small sealed compartments, a collar ring that looked too plain to matter, yet somehow felt heavy with history. This armor did not carry weapons. It carried records. Elias lifted the first piece, a chest plate, and held it up to the light. It was darker than the rest, as if it had absorbed years of sunlight and stress. Along its edge were tiny engraved lines, names, dates, coordinates, too small for Aurelian eyes to read easily, but clear to him. He set it down on the bench. He removed his outer coat with slow care, folding it and placing it neatly beside the case. Under it, he wore a simple dark shirt and trousers, no rank symbols, no medals. He did not come here as a hero. He came here as a messenger. Still, the title Commander followed him like a shadow. He took a breath and began to undress for the ritual, shirt first. Then the thin underlayer that held his body temperature stable in cold rooms. Each piece came off and was folded, placed aside. He moved with the calm patience of someone who had done this many times, and with the respect of someone who knew this moment mattered. Behind him, the attendants did not move, but he could feel their attention sharpen. Humans were different in small ways. Humans had hair, visible pores, scars that stayed. Their skin showed time clearly, like a book that refused to hide its pages. Elias' back faced them now. And on his back, across the broad space between his shoulders and down to his spine, lay the tattoo. It was not decorative, it was not personal, it was a mark. At first glance, it looked like a geometric pattern, thin black lines forming an interlocking shape, like a maze seen from above. But it had strange precision, too clean to be made by a normal needle. Some parts looked slightly raised, like the skin had been changed, not just colored. Elias did not touch it. He did not need to. He could feel it without his fingers, the way you could feel an old scar even when it did not hurt. He had received the mark years ago, long before he held any command. It had been part of a ceremony on Earth, in a quiet room beneath a museum that most citizens didn't know existed. He had been young, stubborn, and full of questions. He was still full of questions. He was just better at carrying them. The attendants shifted. A soft sound escaped one of them, almost a gasp, quickly swallowed. Another leaned forward a fraction, then caught itself and straightened again. Elias kept moving. He lifted the chest plate and slid it over his torso. The inside adjusted against his skin like a cool hand. He fastened it with 2 quick locks at the side. A small light blinked once, then went dim again. The armor recognized him, that was all. He reached for the shoulder pieces. The door behind him, seamless crystal, made a faint chiming tone. Someone had entered. The attendants turned and bowed low all at once. Their robes brushed the floor in a soft wave. Elias did not turn yet. He knew who it was. The air itself felt different when she was present, as if the room became more careful. The Aurelian queen stepped inside. She wore no crown. Her authority did not need one. Her robe was a deep shade of silver blue, woven with threads that caught the light and then released it slowly, like breath. Her face was narrow and smooth, her eyes large and bright. They did not look human. They did not look like any animal from Earth. They looked like a night sky that had decided to watch back. Behind her stood 2 silent guards, not with weapons but with posture. Their purpose was to be there, a reminder that the Queen's world had rules. The Queen said nothing at first. She did not greet the attendants. She did not greet Elias. Her gaze went directly to his exposed back, and she froze. It was not dramatic, it was not loud, but it was real. One moment she moved like flowing glass. The next moment she became still, as if the room had turned her into part of its crystal. The attendants stayed bowed, but Elias could feel their confusion. They did not expect their queen to pause for any human. Elias set the shoulder piece down gently on the bench. He turned slowly. The queen's eyes did not leave the tattoo. Her voice, when it came, was thin and quiet. "That mark." Elias met her gaze without challenge. He kept his hands visible and empty. "Your Majesty." The queen did not answer the title. She took one step closer, then another, moving as if pulled forward by something older than curiosity. Her guards remained where they were, but their posture tightened. The attendants did not dare breathe too loudly. "Where did you receive it?" the queen asked. Elias understood then. This was not part of the plan. The meeting was supposed to be formal, symbolic armor, polite words, negotiation. Everyone expected the queen to speak like a ruler speaking to a smaller nation. Everyone expected Elias to act grateful for attention. But now the queen sounded like someone seeing a ghost. Elias kept his tone respectful, simple. "On Earth, in a ceremony." The queen's throat moved as if she swallowed a stone. "Impossible." Elias did not argue. He had learned that when someone says impossible, they usually mean, "I cannot accept this yet." The queen raised a hand slowly, not touching him, only pointing toward the mark like it might vanish if she blinked. "That pattern belongs to a vow. A vow made before my people wore these forms." One of the attendants made a small, startled sound. The queen did not look back. Elias let the words settle. Then he said, carefully, "Humans keep old vows." The queen's eyes flickered, focusing now not just seeing the mark but measuring the man wearing it. "You are not here by accident," she said. "No," Elias replied. "I am here because of the oath." The room seemed to tighten around them, as if the walls leaned in to listen. The crystal carvings caught the light differently, the spirals looking less like decoration and more like witnesses. The queen's voice dropped lower. "Who sent you?" Elias hesitated only a breath. He could not reveal everything yet, not here. Not in this chamber full of listening patterns and watchful attendants, so he gave the truth that was safe. "The ones who remember," he said. A strange silence followed, heavy and deep. For the first time, the queen's expression shifted. Not anger, not pride, fear. Not the simple fear of danger. but the fear of being confronted by something she had hoped was only a story. Elias turned back to the bench and reached for the next piece of armor, a back plate that would cover the tattoo. He paused, holding it in both hands. He did not put it on yet. He looked at the Queen and spoke with calm clarity, as if he were reading a line from a book he had memorized. "Your Majesty," he said, "before I cover this mark, you should decide what it means to you." The Queen's lips parted slightly as if she might speak. Then she stopped, because she had recognized something, not just the pattern, the weight behind it. Elias saw her eyes narrow, focusing on details in the lines, tiny breaks, tiny corners that formed a code, a signature, a history. The Queen whispered a word so quiet it almost did not exist. A name. A name Elias had never heard in any public archive, any treaty book, any official diplomatic file. Yet he heard it clearly. And when he heard it, the armor in his hands gave a single, soft pulse of light, like it had been waiting for that exact sound. Elias did not know what the name meant, but he knew one thing with certainty. They had come here thinking they would negotiate. Instead, they had stepped into a memory. And the Queen, who was supposed to be the highest power in the room, was suddenly the one who looked unprepared. Elias held the back plate, still not moving, and the chamber waited with him. The sound of it still seemed to hang in the air, thin and fragile, like a glass thread that could shatter if touched. The crystal walls of the chamber glowed softly, but their light felt colder now, as if they too had heard something they were not meant to remember. Elias remained still. The back plate of the armor rested in his hands, its surface smooth and quiet. He did not rush to cover the tattoo. He had learned long ago that some moments demanded patience, not action. The attendants were still bowed, but tension had entered their posture. They did not understand what was happening, only that something sacred or dangerous had been uncovered. The Queen straightened slowly. When she moved, it was with effort, like someone waking from a deep dream. Her eyes finally left the tattoo and met Elias' face. For a long moment, she simply studied him, as if checking whether he was real. "You heard the name," she said. "Yes," Elias replied. "You should not have. That may be true," he said calmly. "But I did." The Queen took another step forward. The guards behind her shifted, not in threat, but in confusion. They had never seen her behave this way. To them, humans were a minor power, clever, adaptable, but young, not a people who carried forgotten names on their skin. "You are marked as a witness," the Queen said. "And as a reminder," Elias inclined his head slightly. "That is how it was explained to me." The Queen let out a slow breath. It sounded almost like a sigh, though Aurelians rarely sighed. "Do you know what that mark truly is?" Elias did not pretend certainty. "I know what it represents to humans." "That is not enough," she said. She turned away from him and walked toward the far wall of the chamber. As she approached, the carvings there began to glow brighter, responding to her presence. The spirals shifted, opening like eyes. The attendants lifted their heads in quiet surprise. The Queen placed her palm against the wall. At once, the chamber changed. The crystal surface rippled, becoming clear like still water. Shapes formed within it, not images, not quite memories, but impressions. Colors and light arranged themselves into something like a story. Elias watched without moving. "This chamber is older than our empire," the Queen said, her voice steady now, controlled. "It was made to hold truths that could not be trusted to living minds." Within the wall, a vision took shape. Stars scattered across darkness, unfamiliar constellations drifting slowly. Then shapes appeared, vast, fragile vessels, clearly damaged, moving without direction. "Long ago," the Queen continued, "my people fled. We were not rulers then. We were survivors." The attendants listened, stunned. This was not a story shared lightly. Some of them had likely never heard it at all. "We had lost our home system," the Queen said. "Our technology was failing, our numbers were low. Other species saw weakness and turned away." The vision shifted. New shapes appeared, smaller, rougher ships, not elegant, not advanced. Human ships, early ones, boxy, scarred, practical. Elias felt a tightening in his chest. He had seen this before in fragments in archived human records that spoke carefully and never named anyone else. "We encountered your kind by chance," the Queen said, "or so we believed." The image showed human ships approaching the damaged Aurelian fleet, not in attack but in careful formation. Lights blinked in patterns, signals. "You did not have to help us," the Queen said. "You were not powerful, you were not many. You were barely stepping beyond your own star." The image showed human vessels docking, transferring supplies, guiding the broken Aurelian ships toward safety. "But you did," she said quietly. Elias swallowed. The queen removed her hand from the wall. The images faded, but the chamber seemed to remember them like an echo that refused to die. "In return," she said, turning back to him, "we offered knowledge, protection, a future alliance." Elias nodded. "That much is known." The queen's eyes sharpened. "What is not known is the vow." She gestured toward Elias' back. "The mark you carry is not merely a symbol of aid given," she said. "It is a seal of responsibility." One of the attendants finally spoke, voice trembling. "Your Majesty, that vow was fulfilled. It ended ages ago." The queen looked at the attendant and the room seemed to cool. "No," she said, "it was postponed." Silence fell hard. Elias felt the weight of those words settle into place, like a final piece of a puzzle clicking home. "The vow," the queen continued, "was this, that when the younger species who aided us stood at the edge of a choice that would shape many worlds, we would answer their call, not as rulers, not as masters, but as equals." She paused. "That call was never made." Elias spoke gently. "Not until now." The queen studied him again. "Is that why you are here?" "Yes," Elias said, "but not to demand." Her expression flickered with something close to disbelief. "You come bearing an ancient mark, wearing ceremonial armor, standing in my palace, and you say you do not demand." Elias allowed himself a small, careful smile. "Humans learned long ago that demands create resistance. We prefer reminders." The queen's gaze dropped briefly to the armor pieces laid out on the bench. "That armor," she said, "it does not amplify strength." "No," Elias agreed, "it amplifies truth." The queen returned to her throne position at the center of the chamber, though she did not sit. "Why you?" she asked. "Why mark one human when centuries have passed?" Elias answered honestly. "Because humans age, someone must carry the memory forward. When one bearer grows old, another is chosen." The queen's eyes widened slightly. "Chosen by whom?" "By those who remember," Elias repeated. The words seemed to disturb her more the second time. She paced slowly now, hands clasped behind her back. "You understand," she said, "that many in my empire believe humans exaggerate their role in history." "I understand," Elias said. "Many humans believe the same about themselves." That earned him a brief, sharp look, then unexpectedly a soft sound that might have been a laugh. "You speak with confidence," the queen said, "yet you stand alone." Elias glanced at the attendants, at the guards, at the glowing walls. "I am never alone," he said simply. "I stand on the weight of many before me." The queen stopped pacing. "Show me," she said. Elias turned back to the bench. He lifted the back plate of the armor again. This time, instead of placing it on his body, he turned it outward. He pressed his thumb against a small, almost invisible mark on its edge. The armor responded. Light flowed across its surface, forming lines that matched the tattoo on his back. Then the lines shifted, becoming text, human text at first, then translating itself into Aurelian script. Dates appeared, coordinates, names, thousands of them. Records of meetings, aid missions, quiet rescues, shared research, warnings delivered and ignored, warnings delivered and heeded. The chamber filled with soft light. The attendants stared, some stepping back as if overwhelmed. The guards leaned forward despite themselves. "This is not a weapon," Elias said. "It is a ledger." The queen's voice was barely audible. "You kept all of this." "Yes," Elias said. "We always do." The light dimmed again as Elias released the control. The armor returned to silence. The queen closed her eyes. For a long moment she did not speak. When she did, her voice carried something new, not authority, not fear, but understanding. "The name I spoke," she said, "belongs to the one who signed the vow for my people." Elias nodded. "I suspected." "That name was erased from our public history," she said, "because it reminded us of a time when we needed help." Elias met her gaze. "Needing help is not weakness," he said. "Forgetting who helped you is." The queen opened her eyes fully now. There was no anger in them. "Only gravity. You have come at a dangerous time," she said. "The galaxy is unstable, old powers are nervous, new powers are reckless." "That is why we waited," Elias said. The queen looked at the tattoo one last time. "And if we refuse," Elias did not threaten. He did not raise his voice. "Then humanity will continue preparing alone," he said, "as we always have." The queen exhaled slowly. She turned to the attendants. "Leave us." They hesitated, but only a moment. Then they bowed deeply and exited the chamber one by one. Even the guards withdrew to the doorway. At last, only the queen and the human remained. The queen spoke softly, almost to herself. "A reminder, not a demand." Elias placed the back plate on the bench again, still uncovered. "Yes," he said. The queen looked at him, truly looked at him, not as an envoy or a curiosity, but as a representative of something patient and unyielding. "Then tell me, Commander Elias Wren," she said, "what choice stands before us now?" Elias drew a slow breath. Outside the chamber, unseen by either of them, the crystal walls brightened slightly, like something ancient leaning closer to listen. And far beyond the palace, among the stars, forces already in motion continued to turn. The reminder had been delivered. What came next would decide whether the vow remained a memory or became a future. The silence between Elias and the queen was no longer polite silence. It was the kind that waited, heavy and patient, as if time itself had slowed to hear what would be said next. The queen moved first. She stepped toward the center of the chamber and finally sat upon her throne. It rose from the crystal floor like a natural shape, grown rather than made. When she settled into it, the light around her softened, responding to her presence. "You ask us to remember," she said, "but memory is not the same as agreement." Elias stood straight, hands relaxed at his sides. "No," he said, "but agreement without memory does not last." The queen watched him closely. "Humans are bold to speak this way to a ruling sovereign." Elias met her gaze calmly. "Humans learned that silence can be more dangerous than disrespect." For a moment, the queen said nothing. Then she inclined her head slightly, not a bow, but an acknowledgement. "Tell me," she said, "do all humans speak like you?" "No," Elias replied. "Many speak much worse." That earned a quiet sound from the queen, almost amusement. She rested one long finger against the arm of the throne. "You say a choice stands before us. Explain it plainly." Elias nodded. He appreciated plain requests. They meant less room for misunderstanding. "Humanity has observed changes," he said. "Trade routes growing unstable, communications failing in ways that do not match known patterns, entire regions becoming quiet." The queen's expression tightened. "We have noticed this as well." "Then you know," Elias continued, "that whatever is happening does not move like a fleet or a government or a natural disaster. It moves like pressure," the queen said softly, "like something leaning on the galaxy." "Yes," Elias agreed. The queen's eyes narrowed. "And you believe we are part of the answer?" "We believe you are part of the preparation," Elias said. The queen rose from her throne again, restless. She walked slowly around the chamber's edge, her steps soundless. "Preparation for what?" Elias hesitated, not from fear, but from care. "We do not yet know." That answer hung in the air. "You come asking for alliance," the queen said, "yet you do not know the enemy." "We come asking for trust," Elias replied. "Alliance may follow." The queen stopped near the wall where the visions had appeared earlier. The crystal surface shimmered faintly, as if it remembered being touched. "You understand," she said, "that my council will resist this." "I expect it," Elias said. "They will say the vow is obsolete." "They already have," Elias said. "They will say humans are manipulating history." "They often do," Elias said calmly. The queen turned sharply. "You do not seem troubled by this." Elias considered his words carefully. "Humans stopped being troubled by disbelief when we realized it was predictable." The queen studied him for a long moment. "You truly believe your kind is patient?" "We are not," Elias said, "but we are stubborn." That answer made her pause. She returned to the center of the chamber and faced him directly. "If we stand beside you," she said, "we place ourselves at risk." "Yes," Elias said. "If we refuse," she continued, "we risk dishonor." "Yes," the queen's voice dropped lower. "And if we delay?" Elias did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. "Then you risk being unprepared." The queen closed her eyes. For the first time since Elias had entered the palace, she looked tired. "My people spent generations ensuring we would never need help again," she said. "We built strength, influence, control." She opened her eyes and looked at the tattoo again. "And yet here you stand, proof that strength alone does not erase debt." Elias shifted slightly. "Not uncomfortable, just attentive. Human history taught us that ignoring debt does not make it disappear, it makes it come back larger." The queen turned away, clasping her hands behind her back. "If I bring this before the council," she said, "they will ask why the bearer of the mark is only a commander." Elias nodded. "They will. They will expect an admiral, a head of state." "Yes," Elias said. "Why are you not one?" she asked. Elias took a slow breath. "Because humans do not send rulers to ask for help. We send those trained to listen." That stopped her. She turned back to him slowly. You are saying your leaders did not want power in this room. They wanted honesty, Elias said. The queen considered that, then gestured toward the armor pieces still resting on the bench. Finish preparing, she said. I would see the armor whole. Elias inclined his head and turned back to the bench. He lifted the back plate once more. This time he placed it against his skin, covering the tattoo. The plate adjusted, sealing gently as if reluctant to hide the mark. A faint hum passed through the armor as the system completed itself. He added the remaining pieces, arms, collar, light framework along his legs. Each part clicked softly into place. The armor did not glow. It did not project shields or weapons. When he was finished, he looked like what he was, a human wearing memory. The queen circled him once, studying the armor with open curiosity. You wear this not for protection, she said. No, Elias replied, it offers none. Then why wear it at all? Because symbols speak when words fail. The queen stopped in front of him. And now, Elias met her gaze, now the symbol has been seen, she nodded slowly. There is something else, she said. Elias waited. The vow, she continued, included a condition. Elias raised an eyebrow slightly. I suspected. The queen gestured toward the chamber walls. If the younger species called upon us, we were to answer, but only if they had not become what we once feared. Elias felt a quiet tension form in his chest. And what did you fear? The queen's voice was careful. That power would make you careless. That growth would make you cruel. Elias considered that. A fair concern. The queen's eyes searched his face. Have you? No, Elias said simply. The queen tilted her head. You answer quickly. Because we ask ourselves that question often, Elias said. She studied him in silence. Then she spoke a single word. Show me. Elias did not hesitate. He reached to the collar ring of the armor and tapped it twice. The chamber dimmed. Then light returned not from the walls, but from the armor itself. It projected outward, filling the space with soft images. Human cities, crowded, imperfect, alive. Different cultures, different forms, working together with visible effort. Humans standing beside non-humans in research stations, in disaster response zones, in shared habitats. None of the images showed conquest. They showed cooperation, arguments, failures, repairs, try again. We are not perfect, Elias said quietly. We still make mistakes. The images shifted, human diplomats stepping back from conflict, choosing delay over force. Human ships rerouting to avoid destabilizing regions. Humans refusing technologies that promised control at too high a cost. But we learned, he continued, that survival is not about winning, it is about continuing. The light faded. The queen did not speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was steady. I will convene the council. Elias inclined his head. That is all we ask. She raised a hand. Do not misunderstand, debate will be fierce. We expect nothing less, Elias said. The queen looked at him with something like respect. You have placed a great burden on yourself. Elias shrugged slightly. Humans carry many. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. If the council rejects this, you will leave here unchanged. No punishment, no reprisal. That was agreed upon, Elias said. But she added softly, if they accept, nothing will be the same. Elias met her gaze. That is also agreed upon. The queen gave a small nod. Then remain here, the chamber will accommodate you. She turned toward the exit, then paused. Commander Elias Wren. Yes, your majesty. She looked back once more at the armor, at the man inside it. The galaxy has forgotten many things. Today you reminded us of one we were not ready to face. Elias replied with quiet honesty. Humans are used to that. The queen left the chamber. The crystal door closed behind her, seamless once more. Elias stood alone. He exhaled slowly, letting tension drain from his shoulders. The chamber responded, light softening around him. Far beyond the palace, unseen and unspoken, the pressure on the galaxy continued to build. And now, at last, it was being noticed. It was shaped like a wide circle, with rising tiers of crystal seats carved directly into the walls. Each seat was occupied by an Aurelian counselor, tall, silver-skinned beings with eyes that reflected light differently depending on mood. Some glowed softly, others were sharp and cold. At the center of the chamber stood a single platform. Elias Wren stood upon it alone. His armor was inactive now, its surface dull and quiet. He had not been asked to remove it. That alone told him much. The council wanted to see it. They wanted to be reminded. The queen entered last. At her arrival, the chamber stilled. The counselors bowed their heads not deeply but with precision. Authority was respected here but not worshipped. She took her place at the highest seat, overlooking them all. "This council is convened," she said, her voice carrying easily, "to examine a claim long buried and a vow long delayed." A ripple of quiet reaction passed through the chamber. One counselor rose. This one's robes were darker than the rest, woven with sharp lines instead of flowing patterns. His eyes were bright and focused. "Your Majesty," he said, "with respect, this matter should never have reached this chamber." The Queen did not look at him. "Yet it has." The counselor turned his gaze to Elias. "A human stands here claiming authority over our history." Elias remained still. He had expected this. "I claim no authority," Elias said calmly. "Only memory." Another counselor stood, this one older, her posture slow but steady. "Memory is unreliable," she said, "especially when it comes from those who benefit from it." Elias nodded. "That is true." The chamber stirred. Some counselors glanced at one another, surprised by the agreement. "So why should we listen to you?" the older counselor asked. Elias answered without hesitation. "Because I brought proof." A murmur spread. The first counselor spoke sharply. "Symbols and projections are easily forged." The Queen raised a hand. Silence fell. "The armor has already been examined," she said. "Its records align with sealed archives we believed incomplete." That caused visible unease. A third counselor rose, this one younger, his eyes glowing with a restless light. "Even if the vow existed," he said, "it does not bind us now. The galaxy has changed." "Yes," Elias said. "It has." The counselor turned toward him. "Then explain why we should risk ourselves for a species that no longer needs help." Elias took a slow breath. "We do not need help to survive," he said. "We need help to ensure others do." That caused the chamber to quiet in a different way. The younger counselor frowned. "That answer avoids the question. It reframes it," Elias said. The Queen leaned forward slightly. "Let him speak." Elias continued. "Humanity has reached a point where isolation is no longer safe, not because we are weak, but because what is coming does not care how strong any one species is." Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. The first counselor folded his arms. "You still cannot name this threat." "No," Elias agreed, "but we can describe its effect." He raised a hand, and the armor responded softly, respectfully. A simple projection appeared above the platform, star maps with regions slowly dimming. "Trade failures," Elias said. "Communications that vanish without damage. Systems that fall silent without warning." The projection showed patterns, not random but slow and spreading. "This is not conquest," Elias said. "It is pressure." The older counselor leaned forward. "We have seen similar disruptions before. They resolved." "Yes," Elias said. "Because they were temporary." He adjusted the projection. A timeline appeared, stretching back centuries. "This pattern does not resolve," he said. "It accumulates." Silence followed. The Queen spoke quietly. "The human assessment aligns with our own private observations." Several counselors turned sharply toward her. "You knew," one demanded. "I suspected," the Queen replied. "I waited for confirmation." The dark-robed counselor scoffed. "And you place that confirmation in the hands of a human commander?" The Queen's gaze hardened. "I place it in the hands of evidence." She gestured toward Elias. "He is not here to command, he is here to warn." The younger counselor looked thoughtful now. "If we answer this call," he said, "we expose ourselves." "Yes," Elias said, "and if we do not." Elias did not soften the truth. "Then you may face what comes alone." A stir of disapproval moved through the chamber. "That is a threat," someone muttered. "No," Elias said gently, "it is a forecast." The Queen raised her hand again. "We will test him." All eyes turned to her. "The vow did not demand blind loyalty," she said. "It demanded judgment." She looked at Elias. "You will answer the council's questions fully, honestly." Elias inclined his head. "As agreed." The first question came quickly. "What does humanity gain from this alliance?" Elias answered simply, "Time." A second voice followed. "Why should we trust humans not to lead us into conflict?" Elias replied, "Because we avoid it when possible." A third question, sharper. "What if the threat requires sacrifice?" Elias did not flinch. "Then we discuss it together." The older counselor asked softly. "What if humanity is wrong?" Elias met her gaze. "Then we will be wrong together, and we will adapt." The chamber fell quiet again. The younger counselor looked at the Queen. "He does not speak like a conqueror." "No," the Queen said, "he speaks like a planner." The dark-robed counselor remained unconvinced. "Words are easy. How do we know humanity has not already positioned itself to benefit?" Elias answered before the queen could. Because we came first. That drew attention. We could have waited, Elias said. We could have prepared alone and revealed nothing, but secrecy benefits no one in the long term. The queen nodded slowly. The older counselor spoke again. There is one final condition. Elias waited. If we stand with humanity, she said, we do so publicly. Elias understood the weight of that. Yes. No shadows, she continued. No quiet arrangements. Yes, Elias said again. The counselors began to murmur among themselves, voices low but intense. The chamber filled with overlapping light patterns as emotions rose. The queen allowed it for a time. Then she stood. The council will withdraw to deliberate, she said. The human envoy will remain. The counselors rose and exited through multiple crystal passages, leaving the chamber gradually quieter. At last, only Elias and the queen remained. She descended from her seat and approached him. You handled them well, she said. I spoke the truth, Elias replied. It helps. She studied him closely. If they accept, you will have changed the course of many worlds. Elias shook his head slightly, only reminded them of a path they once chose. The queen looked toward the empty seats. They fear losing control. So do humans, Elias said. That is why we share it. She was silent for a long moment. When the council returns, she said, their decision will bind us. Elias nodded. We are ready. The queen looked at the armor one last time. Then let us see whether echoes can still become voices. Far from the council chamber, beyond politics and memory, the quiet pressure on the galaxy continued its slow advance. But now, at least, it was no longer unnoticed. Elias stood alone on the central platform, the crystal floor warm beneath his boots. His armor remained still, quiet as a held breath. Time passed differently here. There were no clocks, no shadows to measure it, only the slow pulse of light in the walls, rising and falling like a calm heart. He used the time to think, not about arguments, not about outcomes. About responsibility. The mark on his back was covered now, but he could still feel it. Not physically, more like an awareness, a reminder that he was part of something far larger than himself. He was not the first bearer. He would not be the last. That thought steadied him. At last, the crystal passages around the chamber began to glow. The counselors returned. They entered in silence, taking their seats one by one. Their light patterns were muted now, restrained. Debate had passed. What remained was decision. The queen entered last. She did not go to her seat immediately. Instead, she walked to the edge of the central platform and stopped a few steps from Elias. The council has reached a conclusion, she said. Every counselor turned their attention inward, focused. Elias inclined his head. I am listening. The queen returned to her seat and raised her hand. Let it be spoken. The older counselor, the one whose voice had carried careful weight earlier, stood. Human envoy, she said. The council recognizes the existence of the ancient vow. A quiet stir moved through the chamber. Elias remained still. We acknowledge, she continued, that the vow was never fulfilled, only delayed. The younger counselor rose next. We accept that the conditions described by the human assessment are credible. Another ripple, stronger this time. The dark-robed counselor stood last. His light was controlled but sharp. However, he said, recognition is not the same as surrender. Elias met his gaze calmly. The queen spoke. The vow did not demand obedience, it demanded response. She turned to Elias. Humanity has made the call. Elias felt a subtle shift in the room, not triumph, not relief, gravity. The Aurelians will answer, the queen said. The words settled like stone. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then the dark-robed counselor spoke again. There is a condition. Elias expected that. The vow contains a clause, the counselor said, one that was intentionally forgotten. The queen's posture stiffened slightly. Elias looked between them. I am not aware of such a clause. That is because, the counselor said, it was never meant for humans to invoke. The queen closed her eyes briefly. Then she opened them and nodded once. Speak it, she said. The counselor raised his hand and the chamber responded. The crystal wall behind him shimmered, revealing text in ancient Aurelian script. The symbols were older than their current language, sharp and angular. Elias' armor reacted softly, translating. The counselor read aloud. When the younger species calls upon us, he said, we will return what was given, not more, not less. Elias frowned slightly. Return what was given, the older counselor answered. When your ancestors aided us, they gave more than resources. The projection shifted. It showed early human-Aurelian cooperation, shared research, open data, cultural exchange. Then it focused on something smaller, subtle. Human scientists teaching Aurelian minds how to think differently, not better, differently, how to question assumptions. How to plan for uncertainty, how to design systems that failed safely instead of perfectly. Elias felt a slow realization form. "You mean perspective," he said. "Yes," the Queen replied. "You taught us how to adapt." The younger counselor spoke. "The clause demands that we return that gift." Elias tilted his head. "In what form?" the dark-robed counselor answered. "By stepping back." The chamber grew very quiet. "When we answer the call," the counselor continued, "we must do so not as leaders but as supporters. Not as decision-makers but as contributors." Elias understood fully now. "You are required," he said slowly, "to give up control." The Queen's voice was calm but firm. "We must become what you once were to us." Elias exhaled quietly. This was not a symbolic cost. This was real. "You fear this," Elias said, not accusing. "Yes," the Queen said honestly. "We fear losing the center." Elias considered his response carefully. "Humans feared that too." The Queen looked at him. "And?" "We learned," Elias said, "that the center is a dangerous place to stand alone." Silence followed. The dark-robed counselor folded his arms. "If we accept this clause, our influence will diminish." "Yes," Elias said, "our authority will be questioned." "Yes." "Our people will resist." "Yes," Elias said again. The Queen leaned forward. "But we will endure." Elias met her gaze. "That is the goal." The older counselor looked thoughtful. "If we stand beside humanity, not above it, others will notice." "They already are," Elias said. The younger counselor asked quietly, "And if others invoke their own forgotten vows?" Elias allowed himself a small, honest smile. "Then the galaxy may finally become honest." That answer caused several counselors to glow faintly, uneasy but intrigued. The Queen stood. "The Council accepts the clause," she said. A sharp intake of breath moved through the chamber. "We will answer the human call," she continued, "not as rulers returning to claim influence, but as allies returning a debt." She turned to Elias. "This will change how others see us." "Yes," Elias said, "and how they see humanity," she added. "Yes," he agreed. The Queen descended from her seat and approached the platform. She stopped directly in front of Elias. "There is one more matter," she said. Elias waited. "When the vow was written," she said, "it named not just an action but a signal." Elias' armor pulsed faintly. "A signal?" he asked. The Queen nodded. "When the call is answered, a mark must be shown, not hidden." Elias understood immediately. "You want the tattoo revealed," he said. "Yes," the Queen said. "Publicly?" Elias paused, not from fear, from respect for what that meant. "That will make me a symbol," he said. "It already has," the Queen replied. "This only makes it visible." Elias considered the faces around the chamber, curious, wary, thoughtful. Then he nodded. "I will comply." The Queen stepped back and raised her hand. The chamber lights shifted. The armor unlocked with a soft tone. The back plate released, folding away. Elias turned slowly, deliberately, exposing the mark to the full council. The geometric lines caught the chamber light, reflecting it in subtle patterns. A collective stillness fell. No one spoke. The mark was no longer just history. It was active. The Queen spoke softly. "Let it be known, the vow has returned." The counselors bowed, not to Elias, but to the meaning he carried. Elias felt the weight of it settle fully now. This was no longer a reminder, it was a beginning. The Queen turned to him one final time. "Return to your people," she said. "Tell them the Aurelians stand ready." Elias inclined his head deeply. "They will hear." As he resecured the armor and prepared to leave, the chamber felt different, not lighter but aligned. Far across the stars, forces continued to move. But now they would not be met by silence. They would be met by memory, returned and shared. It did not flash across the stars or interrupt communications with force. It did not declare power or issue commands. It simply existed. Across known space, old systems and forgotten relays awakened quietly. Archives that had not been accessed in centuries opened on their own. Records once marked as ceremonial or irrelevant moved to the surface. Among them was a single image. A human figure standing in a crystal chamber, armor open, back turned, not in weakness but in trust. Across his skin lay a geometric mark, sharp and undeniable, and beside him stood the Aurelian Queen. The message carried no threat, no demand, only a statement. "The vow has returned." Reactions spread slowly but deeply. On distant worlds, councils paused mid-debate as long-buried alerts activated. In quiet research stations, observers leaned closer to screens they had never expected to matter. Traders, scholars, archivists all felt a shift they could not immediately name. Humanity had spoken, not with fleets, with memory. On Earth, Elias Wren stood in a simple chamber overlooking the curve of the planet below. He was no longer wearing the armor. It rested in its case nearby, silent again. Before him, a group of human representatives watched the incoming data in silence. They were not cheering, they were reading. "The Aurelians have confirmed public alignment," one analyst said. "No reservations, no delays." Another added, "Secondary powers are reacting. Some are pulling records, others are issuing inquiries." Elias nodded. "As expected." A third voice, quieter, "They are afraid." "Yes," Elias said, "they should be. Not because of humans, because of what they might remember." Across the stars, the first response came from the Hellier Collective, a species known for rigid order and flawless record-keeping. Their archives were deep but selective. When the signal reached them, their systems hesitated, then flagged a contradiction, a vow. One they did not recall honoring. The Hellier Council convened within hours. "This is human manipulation," one voice declared. "They exaggerate old assistants." Another voice countered, "The data does not align with fabrication." A third spoke, uneasy. "We erased sections of our early expansion records." Silence followed. If the Aurelians had owed a debt, who else did? On a border world of the Trell Alliance, a young diplomat stared at the image of Elias' tattoo projected on a wall. "My grandmother used to tell stories," she whispered, "about humans who helped us settle this world." Her superior frowned. "Those were myths." She shook her head slowly. "No, they were memories." The message had done what no fleet could. It made the galaxy look backward. And humanity had been waiting for that. Back on Earth, Elias listened as reports continued to arrive. Multiple species requesting clarification. Several have opened channels directly to us. One has asked if their obligations are current. Elias allowed himself a small exhale. "Tell them the truth," he said. The room turned toward him. "We are not collecting debts," he continued. "We are inviting cooperation." One of the representatives frowned. "Some will resist." "Yes," Elias agreed. "They always do." Another asked, "And if they refuse?" Elias looked out at the planet below, blue, fragile, persistent. "Then we proceed without them," he said, "as we planned." The preparation had been quiet. That was the part most of the galaxy did not understand. While others built empires, humans built systems. Redundancies, shared knowledge networks, safe failures, ways to survive collapse without causing one. They had prepared for loneliness. Alliance was a bonus. In Aurelian space, the Queen stood before her people. Not in the council chamber, in an open forum. Her image was broadcast across their worlds. She did not wear ceremonial robes. She wore simple attire like a citizen. "We have returned a debt," she said, "not to lose ourselves, but to remember who we were." There was fear. There was anger, there was pride, but there was also something else, relief. They were no longer pretending they had risen alone. Across the galaxy, observers watched. Some scoffed, some calculated, some quietly hoped. In the deep archives of an ancient species known only as the Viral, a dormant system activated. A voice, old and slow, spoke into the void. "Humans still live," the system searched. "Then it is not yet too late." No one heard it. Yet, on Earth, night passed into morning. Elias left the observation chamber and walked through a garden grown beneath a glass dome. Plants from dozens of worlds grew side by side, not perfectly, but together. A young aide approached him. "Sir," she said, "are you worried?" Elias considered the question. "Yes," he said honestly. She nodded. "About the threat." "That," he said, "and about what comes after." She frowned slightly. "After? When the galaxy realizes," Elias said, "that humans do not forget and we do not abandon." She looked at him, uncertain. "That makes some very nervous," he added gently. The aide smiled faintly. "It also makes some feel safe." Elias returned the smile. "Exactly." Far beyond Earth, signals continued to ripple outward, requests for dialogue, for confirmation, for shared planning. And beneath all of it, the pressure continued to build. But now it met resistance, not forceful, not violent. Intentional. Humanity had never been the loudest voice. But now, as old vows resurfaced and forgotten allies stepped forward, it became clear. They had always been listening, and they had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone realized. That was the first thing humanity had learned. Collapse, when it came, did not arrive like a storm. It arrived like silence spreading, like systems failing politely. Like answers taking longer each time until no one was listening anymore. That was why humans had prepared the way they did, not for war, for continuation. Elias Wren stood once more in the crystal chamber of the Aurelians. This time, he was not alone. Holographic presences filled the space, representatives from dozens of species. Some appeared as light forms, others as symbols translated into shapes humans could understand. The queen stood beside Elias, not above him. That alone told the story. "We are gathered," the queen said, her voice steady, "because the pressure we have all sensed is no longer theoretical." Around the chamber, projections activated. Not maps of fleets or borders, but patterns, energy flow disruptions, information decay. Regions where cause and effect no longer aligned cleanly. "This is not an enemy," Elias said when it was his turn to speak. "It is a condition." Some reacted with confusion, others with quiet dread. "A condition?" a voice asked. "Of what?" "Of a galaxy that has grown too complex," Elias answered. "Too fast, too dependent on systems that assume stability." The queen nodded. "We built higher and higher," she said, "without asking what would happen if the foundation shifted." Elias continued. "Humans call this kind of failure a cascade, when one small problem spreads because nothing was designed to fail safely." A representative flickered uneasily. "You are saying this cannot be stopped." "No," Elias said. "I am saying it cannot be fought." That caused a stir. "Then why gather us?" another demanded. "Why awaken vows and debts?" Elias did not raise his voice. He did not need to, because the answer was never resistance, he said. It was adaptation. The armor case at his feet opened by itself. Elias did not put the armor on. Instead, he activated it. Light spread gently through the chamber, forming something new, not a warning, not a command, a design. "This," Elias said, "is what humanity has been building." The projections showed networks, not centralized, not controlled. Shared knowledge hubs spread across space. Systems designed to disconnect without collapse. Cultures taught to preserve meaning even when technology failed. "It is not an empire," Elias said. "It is a pattern," the queen added, "one that can survive fragmentation." The room was silent. "You prepared for this alone?" a voice asked. "Yes," Elias said, "at first." The projections changed. Human systems connecting with others, Aurelian frameworks, Trell logistics, Hellier archival redundancies, not absorbed, integrated. "When the galaxy began to forget how to slow down," Elias said, "humans learned how to wait." Another voice, quiet and old, "You expected us to fail." Elias shook his head. "We expected everyone to need help eventually." The queen looked out over the assembled presences. "The vow was never about power," she said. "It was about trust in a moment like this." The pressure pattern shifted again. This time it showed something hopeful, stabilization, not reversal, but balance. "If we do nothing," Elias said, "the galaxy will fracture into isolated islands. Some will survive, many will not." "And if we follow your pattern?" someone asked. Elias answered honestly. "You will change. You will lose some speed, some control, but you will endure." Silence followed, not fearful but thoughtful. One by one, signals appeared, agreements, not treaties but participation. "We will contribute," said one species. "We will share archives," said another. "We will teach," said a third. "And learn." The queen looked at Elias. "They are answering," he nodded. "They always do, eventually." The chamber's light softened. The tension that had lived there for centuries finally eased. Later, much later, Elias stood alone at a viewport overlooking open space. The armor rested behind him, closed for what might be the last time. The queen approached quietly. "You never intended to lead," she said. "No," Elias replied. "We intended to connect." She studied the stars. "The galaxy will remember this." Elias smiled faintly. "It already forgot once. That's why we made it harder to forget again." She turned to him. "What will happen to the mark?" Elias considered that. "It will remain," he said, "until it's no longer needed. And then? Then it becomes history," he said. "The safest place for a weapon is the past." The queen looked at him with something like awe. "Humans are dangerous." "Yes," Elias agreed softly, "but not in the way most think." Far across the stars, systems adjusted, cultures slowed, knowledge spread outward, not upward. The pressure did not vanish, but it no longer threatened collapse. Humanity had not saved the galaxy. They had taught it how to survive itself. And as the stars continued their quiet turning, one truth became clear to all who remembered. Humans did not conquer. They did not rule. They did not forget. They prepared. And when the galaxy finally needed them, they were already there.